Exactly.
which led me to hanging out on the streets of Chicago with gangs. I was off and on homeless between 17 and 19. And then at 19, got pregnant with my daughter, and she was my reason to change. So I named her Destiny, moved out of the neighborhood, and really started to dream at that point in my life.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from beautiful British Columbia, Canada, and the city is Prince George. And today we have a very, very special guest. And her name is Jennifer Hernandez. No, did I say that correctly?
Hernandez.
Hernandez, Jennifer Hernandez. Sorry for that, Jennifer. And Jennifer has a very, very interesting story. And to best describe it is from trauma to triumph. And there is a lot in between, and she is also an entrepreneur extraordinaire. Jennifer, give me a little bit of your background, where you are. You are in Chicago, Illinois, and a little bit of your background. You were born there, and just take it away from there.
Yeah, so I didn't take the traditional ways in life. I actually had some abandonment issues when I was around 11, and it sent me running away by the time I was 13. Kicked out of high school, sophomore year, sent to an alternative program. My parents were desperately trying to save me from myself. But everybody knows, you're not really, no one can save you from you except for you,
Exactly.
which led me to hanging out on the streets of Chicago with gangs. I was off and on homeless between 17 and 19. And then at 19, got pregnant with my daughter, and she was my reason to change. So I named her Destiny, moved out of the neighborhood, and really started to dream at that point in my life. And then, which led me into the mortgage industry, which a few years later, I became very successful and had my own branch, built a $500,000 house, had a vacation home. And so I really was able to channel all of what I had been through in life and create a better life for my family.
So from the time that Destiny was born, 18 years later now, is that correct?
No, she's 25 now.
How long?
She's 25 now.
25. But so that kind of changed everything for you, right?
In 4 years, I was in a completely different place after I had her.
So the other part, talk a little bit more about your growing up and somewhat dysfunctional family issue. Your dad was flying balloons of some sort or another, or what was he doing?
My parents actually, when they were together, they owned a balloon company. So they would partner with carnivals, and they would sell like head bobbers, balloons, different things like that, and dress up like a clown and walk around with the big bouquet of balloons to sell. So in my beginning years, it was very fun for a child.
So would they go all over the place then, all around, or mainly in Illinois, or did they go much further than that?
We actually lived in Tennessee at that time.
Okay.
So that balloon company started when they lived in Tennessee.
Okay. And then they would travel a lot? Were you on the road a lot? I'm just trying to figure out what happened is that obviously if a lot of changes that took place that, you were exposed to trauma, and I'm not asking particularly for the details of that, but still it affected your schooling, and then, to leave your house at 13, you were still a child, really, and that must have been very shocking
So what
for you.
happened was the life that it started off as a very stable home, and then when my parents got divorced, I was about 4 years old.
Ooh.
And my mother got remarried and had a couple more kids, and I lived with her for a period of time, and that was a very abusive relationship that she was in. And I lived with her up until 11. And when I was 11, she decided to move out of state to try to make that marriage work. She wanted to move back to Tennessee because we had relocated from Tennessee back to Illinois, because that's where we were from. And so the man she married was originally from Tennessee, and he wanted to go back home. So she made a very tough decision to leave me and my brother, who she had with her first marriage, to try to save the second marriage. And she felt that that was what she needed to do, you know, to give. She had given up so quickly on the first marriage that she didn't want to do the same thing with the second.
Right.
So she was willing to, you know.
And so you had your brother as well. Was he older
so me and
than
my
you?
brother, he was 1 year older than me, and we moved in with my father. He took over as sole guardian.
Okay. And he was, and then you were in Chicago then, or not?
Yeah.
Are we still in?
No, we were in Orland Park, Illinois, is where we grew up, a suburb of Chicago, southwest suburb of Chicago.
Okay.
Yeah. And so the difference between mom and dad was that, you know, dad was just had us on the weekends primarily, and we never lived with him to where he had to be solely responsible for everything.
Right.
So after moving in with him, we realized, you know, it was definitely different. We didn't have our sisters. I didn't have my mom. And he was 100% Italian, so very, very, very loud, swore a lot. You know, that's kind of how we communicated in our household, and didn't know how to communicate that much. And so I felt lost, and it was kind of turned into like emotional abuse, which
Did he remarry again?
No,
your mom remarried, but your dad didn't. Yeah, okay.
No, he stayed single. He had a couple girlfriends, but he didn't get remarried. So what happened? I mean, I was only 11, and obviously it was a time when I needed my mother the most, right? Because I was becoming a woman.
Yeah.
And I just didn't have what I needed, and so I started looking externally, looking for love in all the wrong places, right?
Exactly.
Which a lot of people do.
Yeah.
Then I lost any type of self-worth. So I was just self-sabotage any way I could, drugs, alcohol, gangs eventually. And the thing about the streets is that a lot of people don't realize I didn't feel accepted. I didn't feel loved. I didn't feel ever good enough for my dad. And so I found that on the streets. And the streets gave that to me. And random people who didn't know me, I felt more love from than my own family. And so I'm super grateful for that experience, because it's what made me who I am today, and the mother that I am, and just the servant-driven leader that I am destined to be. So
how about your schooling then? Because all of that, by then you were still in school. So how did that all kind of got together?
What happened was I started running away at 13, you know, with boyfriends, different things. So I would not show up for school. I would ditch class. I would get detentions Saturdays. And that led me, my parents desperately were trying to save me from myself. So they had me locked up in adolescent facilities, because they knew I was doing drugs, and they knew that areas I was hanging out in, I could have been killed. So they desperately tried to save me from myself. And so I was locked up in different adolescent facilities, and just the amount of time I missed out of school caused a problem, and I needed to, get kicked out of high school. Excuse me.
So then what happened? Because now you went up to what grade?
That was sophomore year. I had straight Fs.
Yeah.
Straight Fs sophomore year. Yeah. So at that point, there was no helping me.
Yeah. You okay?
I'm so sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, you want another drink? You okay? Yeah.
Got a throat lounger.
Okay.
I was just a train wreck, and nobody really could help. Nobody can help people unless they're ready to be helped, right? Even like addicts or anybody struggling with any type of addictions. If you're not open, if you don't recognize that you need help, you can't get it.
No.
So
you have to be willing to accept it, right? And willing to, go in a different direction.
And want it,
And want it, yeah, exactly. The initiative has to come from the individual, right?
Yeah, and I didn't have any self-worth. I didn't care if I lived or died. I had no fear of anything, actually, until I got pregnant.
Yeah.
And then I had a person who relied on me to be the best version of myself.
Exactly. And that was destiny.
We all have, yeah, and that was destiny.
Yeah. And then what happened?
So after I gave birth to her, I moved out of the city.
Right.
And I realized I was living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and I started to dream. And I started to see the life that I wanted, not the one I was living in.
Right.
And this is my biggest thing for people is I don't care where you're at, because I know when you're homeless and you're trying to survive so desperately, you are not dreaming at that time. And the best thing you can do for yourself is to start to dream. Start to see the life you want, not the one you're living in, and you can make it happen so quickly because it's truly all up to you, which is, of course, how we get back to no one can stop me but me, because you're the only one who can stop you. Yeah. Anything in life is yours for the taking.
And it's just whether you want it. Everything is possible. Mm-hmm. Everything. Yeah. So take me a little bit further. So you're in the apartment and you started to dream, and you started to dream in terms of entrepreneurship or building something for you and destiny for your future. And so now the challenge that you had, and I'm just imagining, is that although you at some point entered into the financial world, that takes a skill sets that you didn't have then, and so because of your past, so now you had to redevelop all of that. So what happened then, as you had your dreams of the future, and how did you go forward?
Yeah, so it's funny, right? Because if we all think back, especially people who are entrepreneurs, someone reminded me the other day that before I started running away when I was 12, I used to bring gum and sell gum on the bus to the kids. After that, I started selling drugs for a while. And then, I always had a job. Even though I was like so dysfunctional and everything else, the one thing that I had that I always did was work. So I had a work ethic. And when I was off and on homeless, I had a job at a car dealership, and I started as a switchboard operator. And I worked my way up to become a finance manager. And it was the life that I had lived allowed me to think outside the box and not accept no for an answer, right? Because everybody put labels on me. Everybody told me I wasn't going to be, do, or have anything in life. But I knew that there's no one that could say that except for me. I was the one who determined what I wanted and what I was going to be. So when I was in the car business, all these top shot finance managers would come in, and they make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. They'd be like pounding their chest, I'm the best, I'm the best. But this person can't get a car. And they thought that they had made it and they knew everything, and they weren't willing to even put in the work to see if they possibly could. So after I cleaned up after one after another, I started putting the information in the system and putting people in cars when the finance manager who was being paid all the money said that they couldn't. And that's what made me stand out. And then that shortly entered me into the mortgage business. And I did very, very well in low to moderate income areas because I struggled so much in life. I knew how to craft solutions for homeowners who didn't, other people couldn't think outside the box to find the solution they needed in order to get into homes.
So now really what had happened is your education and your schooling was on the street and getting to know individuals and being able to communicate effectively with people. And then the other part was getting the job as on the desk clerk or at the switchboard of the car dealership that exposed you to the finances, and then gradually you became more knowledgeable about it and said, I can do that. And obviously your background, your education, which is not traditional, but it was much more useful. And the reason that I explore it is because I came from that. And I'll tell you later about that I was a failure. But I didn't think so, but I had to prove to me that I wasn't, and I did. So we'll talk about that a little bit later, but first I want to know more about you, and that's why I'm going through this like I do. So, because now all of a sudden you had skill sets that other people simply don't have, and the ability to be an effective communicator is extremely important in life, not only for financing, but to stimulate interaction. Because you had that experience. And the other one at the car dealership, obviously car dealerships is all about financing, of being able to buy or to, and in addition to satisfying the customer and helping them and making decisions and them feeling comfortable with you that you will do that, because people in the car business have not necessarily the best of reputations. Obviously you did, and you saw that, and you took advantage of that. So now, how long were you in the car dealership? Because that took, before you started looking at mortgaging of homes.
So I started in the car business at 17 as a switchboard operator. Then I had some time off and had Destiny and went into some other jobs, but then ended up back in the business when I was 20. And Destiny was in daycare. I ended up getting hired as a biller. So I basically packaged all the deals to send to the finance companies. The only thing I wasn't doing...
Called it, you became a biller, you called it? What is a biller? Right. Just for our guests from around the world here.
Yeah, so that is packaging the whole financial deal, getting everything ready to send to the bank. So the contract,
that has all the elements that of the client that is applying for a loan. You put it all together, and you knew what they needed and what they wanted. You packaged it in such a way that if there was an opportunity to make it acceptable, it would be acceptable.
Yes, and then I got the funding for their car loan, and then I paid the commissions to the finance managers and the salesperson once the deal got funded. So I knew how much money they were making.
Right.
I was like, oh, I can do this.
Exactly.
I can do it. I do not need to be making $13 an hour. I can do their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that created this... So then that created a new skill set in terms of not only did you say, I can do that, but you said, I can do that also with homes, because the numbers are bigger and there are more zeros behind it, but the issues are similar and the same. Yeah,
well, they fired me, see, because I'm not a quitter. No. But at the time, my daughter was young and she really needed her mother, and I was working 60 plus hours a week. The car business fired me because I interviewed somewhere else, because that's how it is in that industry. They fired me. And then I seen an ad. Yeah. Then I seen an ad for a loan officer, and I'm like, a mortgage loan officer. I'm like, oh, I could do this. And then within 6 months, I made over 6 figures. I literally worked maybe 30 hours a week. I was like, this is great.
Yeah.
And I seen my kid. I was able to be a mom, and I was able to earn substantial more income.
It gave you the confidence, Jennifer, that you could do it, right? And and you had already proven that on the car side. And then from there on in, as we said earlier, the packaging or the billing is the same, no different if it's a house or a car. There's just more zeros, right?
Yep. And then I became the top producer in a very short period of time. They offered me a branch. I took the branch opportunity. And then the mortgage crash happened. So,
that was 2006 to 2009, or when was that?
Yeah, so I started in the business 2005.
Okay. Timing was not excellent, Jennifer.
No. It crashed, but it crashed so So
So you became, so that was not bad necessarily for you. It gave you another level of experience, I'm sure, and you were doing still well, you know, because you went from not much to something that had huge potential. Now you knew that this likely was where you wanted to go, and then so. But I know from banks and being an entrepreneur, mortgage companies and all the other things, is that we have banks here in Canada, and I presume it's the same in the United States, that develop billing, if you wish, or packages for mortgages, you know, that either directly through the bank, or then you also have independents that work independently and then put together a package, or billing as you call them, maybe, is to put packages together and show them to different investors. May those be banks, may those be other investors of some sort or another that can fund mortgages. And so,
correct.
and so at one point you took on, were hired by somebody that offered you an office, but then did you then after that become independent?
No, I just had my branch through him. So I was the
Yeah,
branch manager. I hired
right.
on my own team. He just got an override on what we did.
Okay.
So
But it's an
essentially, it was
override is a commission, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But I got line
Just
of
for, I
clear.
guess, kind of listening to us. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then you became the top 1% mortgage packages or billings or providers.
Well,
And
at that time, I became very good, and I didn't understand why I was so great at it. But then I shortly figured out it was because I was helping others, and I have a very servant-driven heart, and helping others is what I'm extremely passionate about. So in the mortgage industry, I was helping them fix their credit, achieve the dream of home ownership, different things. So that's what I was doing, and I was very good at it. But when the crash came, I ended up losing everything. I gave birth to twins in 2006. And I lost my house, my rental properties, and
oof,
everything, and ended up getting divorced.
oof,
In 2011, I jumped back in the game because things had settled down. And I was now a single mom, raising 4-year-old twins and 2 kids going into high school, 8th grade and freshman year.
now you had
And
4.
I had 4. And my ex-husband disappeared after our divorce for quite some time and was an alcoholic. So I became the sole provider and parent, and was building up my business in the mortgage business back in 2011.
Right. That was tough.
Very tough. Monday through Friday, I was building up the mortgage business while I waitressed on the weekends for cash because we needed money.
Yeah.
And and I worked very hard, and every year doubled my business to where in 2018, I said, okay, I'm ready. Time to get my own branch. I became top producer with Loan Depot, and I got my own branch. We were the first branch in the country, and me and my partner came together with another person, and we closed in 2021. We closed 180 million, 65 million in production for myself, became number 1 for FHA lending in the state of Illinois, top 50 and top 1% in the country.
So FHA means what?
Federal Housing Authority. So
Okay.
low to moderate income areas, people more creditly challenged, first-time buyers.
That's where they would go to. Is that a provincial or a state entity, or is it a private or commercial bank structure?
So it's a type of mortgage. So there's 3 different types of mortgages in the United States. It's conventional, FHA, and VA. And FHA and VA are government.
Okay.
So they're backed by the government.
So now you're in 2011, and then did you say, so at what point were you to became extremely
Good.
Successful. Was it 2018?
2021. No,
When?
2021. 2021.
2021. So you reached, so now kind of looking back, you know, from trauma to success, you're getting very close here, right, to the success part, and then, you know, so you're on your own, you have 4 children, you know, and I always like to know their names, you know, I know Destiny, but...
Michael. Michael is my stepson, and he was
Okay.
6 months old when I got with Destiny's father. So I got sole custody of him when he was 4, and I kept sole custody of him after my divorce.
And then you got twins with the fellow that left. So, what are their names?
Damien and Angelina.
And how old are they?
They're 17 now.
17. So they're all kind of getting to the point where, so that's, so if you look, amazing, you know, so there you are. So, okay, then, so the other thing is, so that's how the mortgage business works, is that I have exposure to it, so I know that's how the system works. I always like to deal with independent mortgage packages, because they are innovative, and they have to know how the system works, because if anybody can do it, is saying that this is going to be a delicate one, so I'm going to talk to Jennifer because she knows how to make this work and make it fit. She is not the one that says, no, it's not going to work and that's the end of that. No, she will do, if it can be done, she will find a way of doing it. And that's the reputation that you developed, in my opinion. And I kind of looked at, you know, the average house prices in Illinois in the last couple of years were around $250,000 each. And, you know, and then the interest rates have gone up to 30-year rate is around 6.67 in that area.
Yeah, they just went up to as high as 8.25, and they just came down. So
yeah, but I think you know, so I was kind of looking at it, you know, because obviously I'm going to interview you, so I want to know a little bit about your business, and saying, so the other reason that I look at it, I'm a lumber manufacturer here in Canada, and I do a lot of business in the United States, and particularly in the South and Texas and those areas. So, and then, you know, just give you just a little bit about my background, is that I was born in Holland in November the 1st, 1940. So I'm 83. I just turned 83 about a couple of weeks ago. And,
you are not.
Yes, I am. You know, so, and
no way.
Yeah, and so that was a tough time in Holland, in northeastern Holland, where I was born, and that was just at the start of the Second World War, and my dad, you know, was drafted into the Dutch army. And the last time they heard from him was just before the bombing of Rotterdam. But Rotterdam is a huge, big city, about 3-4 million people, and they bombed the whole center of Rotterdam, and that's the last time that we heard where he had been seen. So we didn't know he was dead or alive. My mom had, I had one sister 1 year older than me, and a brother 2 years older than me, and it was a tough go. And I still remember from when I was 3.5, 4 years old. That was the time that the Allied forces were bombing Germany, and one of the routes over Germany came over our province in Holland, and I still remember hundreds of planes in the air, 200, 300 planes on the way to bombing Germany and the areas that where they were building, in particular any of the things that they needed for the war. And we used to, as kids, go outside, usually of the house on the flat deck to the back of our house, with my mom, not to watch the planes, but because she felt safer outside the house than inside the house. And in the distance we could see cities burning and planes coming back and sometimes not coming back, or being having the fights in the air, and all kinds of things happened. And then the winter of 1944, 1945 was called the hunger winter, where you know, they had cut off all the food supply to that part of Holland, and it was the coldest winter on record. And I remember as kids, we would go with gunny sacks every morning into the railroad yards to pick up anything edible and burnable. And the reason that we did as kids is because the Germans wouldn't shoot us. They would boot us one, but we'd be back the following day. And then we were liberated by the Canadian Army April the 12th, 1945. And that made such an impression on me, is that we saw far too much that we should not have seen that went on. The fighting was very intense in the area that we lived, and it was close to the German border as the Germans tried to get back to Germany and the Canadians were trying to push them out. Things were pretty rough there. But on the other hand, the Canadian Army made such an impression on me that I knew from the time I was 4.5, 5 years old, I would go to the land of my heroes, Canada. And so that's what I knew. There was no question in my mind. That's what I was going to do. Then the other part, you know, for me, I was not very successful academically. That's why I was kind of asking you about your background. I failed grade 3 and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then they said, what are we going to do with this guy? You know, and my parents were beautiful persons, and, you know, so, and they said, well, maybe we need to get him a trade. And and my grandfather was a master carpenter, and my dad was managing a small little lumber company. And so they got me a job in a furniture factory, and then in the evenings I would go to the college and to learn to become a furniture maker. And so that's what I did. And then I wanted to go to Canada when I was 17, and they wouldn't let me, and was too young. And then I got drafted in the Dutch Air Force for 30 months, and then finally I went to Canada when I was 23. I always felt, and you can probably relate to that in a way, is that I was always a happy-go-lucky guy. I still am today, actually. And even then, but when I left school, you know, the friends that I would go with, you know, in grade 7, moved on to college, then university, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that now, but then it was kind of looked down on, and I always felt I had failed. And although I was happy-go-lucky, but still deep down I felt I had failed, and you know, not going any further. And in Holland it is that once you at some point get married and you get a job and then hopefully get a house and a family and all the other things, that if you're looking for a job, they say, okay, where are your diplomas? Well, I didn't have any diplomas, you know, so, and so I kind of felt I had to, so my dream was to go to Canada, start on my own with nothing. That was my dream. The other dream was to build my own lumber mill, and then to go to Canada on my own, start with, as I said, nothing, a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and $150. And I couldn't speak English, you know, didn't know the language, didn't know a soul, didn't, you know, have a job. And I flew into Montreal, then took the train across Canada, and then I landed in Vancouver. And fortunately, I went to the immigration department, and fortunately, there was a German fella, and I could speak some German, and I told them what I wanted to do. I wanted to start my own lumber mill. And he said, go to Prince George. Now, British Columbia is a beautiful, beautiful province. Big province, you know, like Prince George is exactly in the center. 500 miles north of Vancouver, east to west, south to east, 500 miles either way. And, you know, so I did that, and I took the bus to Prince George. I had no idea where I was going to go here. And then, so this was July of 1965, and when I came off I was 23, when I came off the bus, I counted my money at least 3 times, and I had exactly $25.47. But what I did have is attitude. I always look at, no matter what happens today, I think tomorrow is going to be better. You know, and no matter what happens, I always believe that things will get better. I had passion. Whatever I do, I give it all that I got. And then work ethic, I work harder than anybody. But what will follow is success. I'm an example of that, so are you. You know, so, and so it was the $25.47. I got a job here. I needed a job that same evening because all I had is $25.47. Good speaking language. I found another job, got a cleanup man, and then I became a lumber pilot, and then, you know, cut short story short, within a year and a half, I was a superintendent of one of the biggest lumber mills here, and then 10 years later, I started a company called Brink Forest Products, and it's a company I still have now 50 years later, but it's gotten much bigger. And I'm in warehousing and all the other kinds, but I don't want to talk about the success of it, but you know, I'm doing quite successful. And then, you know, so then the other thing that happened to me which had an impact on my life is, even during the time that I was already successful, started the lumber company. First was three employees, and myself worked 60 hours, as long as I could stay awake, 7 days a week, and then kind of build up the company. It's fairly large now, but you know, the people would say to me, "You got to write a book about this," and you know, so at some point, and I tried to do that, you know, over 20 years. I started at stop, and because writing books is not easy, you know all about that. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And so then I knew that if I don't do it now, it will not happen. So I wrote a book, Against All Odds. And it's not about hurrah, hurrah, how successful John is. It's not about that. It's all the ups and downs all along the way. And there were several of them. And I'm going to send you a copy of this book, and I'm going to sign it for you. So that's what I did. And then it's an autobiography. Now, the other thing was an autobiography. I cannot write one. I never written a book in my life, obviously, and I had to do it well. I cannot write something and they say, "No, it's not good enough, I'll do another one." No, you get one crack at it. Then if you don't do that one right, that's it, right? So I did that. And then another thing that happened to me that I have to share with you is that one day I walked into a store here, a bookstore in Prince George, and for some reason or another, I picked up a book, and the title of the book is Driven to Distraction. I have no idea why I picked it up, and it was about ADHD. And I said, "Oh my God, that's me." And I took the book and I wrote inside the book, "Now I finally," in Dutch, because I was ashamed of it, "now I finally know who I am." And so the fellow that wrote it, Dr. Halliwell, he wrote it in 1990. I bought the book January 1997. He's going to be on my podcast here in the next week or so, you know. So, and so in any event, then it took me 5 years before I went to my doc here that had delivered our 2 daughters, and was a personal friend of mine. And one day I walked into his office and he said, "Hey John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." And so we looked at that together, and yes, I do. So I just determined it by myself in 1997 when I looked at Google, got to find out more about it. Then 5 years later, Bonsu, my dog, was diagnosed. And then the more I learned about it and the more I spoke about it, is that they thought that maybe 8% of the population is affected by ADHD. I believe, and so do many others, that it's probably well over 20%. And I started to speak about it more, and I'm a public speaker and in demand a lot of times, and then I'm an author now as well. So I felt I had to write a book about ADHD, so I did that. ADHD Unlocked, and it is written by somebody with an ADHD mind. That means you can start it anywhere, go one direction or the other. It's always interesting in every page. I believe the book is important for people that are affected by the conventional learning model that we have, probably in the States the same as in Canada, and the same it was in Holland, is that I wonder a lot with my mind, and that if I'm sitting in a boring setting, then I'm not very good at that. And so hence, I was not overly successful in grade 3, not in grade 7 either. But if I find something that has my interest, I'm very good at it. I call ADHD a superpower. And
it is a superpower, because every major successful person in this world has got it. And so, and I also was diagnosed with it before they sent me to the alternative school. They diagnosed me ADHD, BD, every ED. I had all the Ds. But the truth is I think a lot of it too is trauma.
And that's another part that I was going to say, that, so what I say, I speak about it a lot now, not only about ADHD, entrepreneurship, and all the other things, because I do a lot of this, is that I say this book, not only my book, but any books that are, Halliwell wrote a number of books that are very, very good. There are other books in the marketplace, is that it's not only for people that have ADHD, but also people that have been affected by trauma is a good example. And people in First Nations and people that have been suppressed or depressed in some form or fashion became slow learners. I think it's very important for them. And, and so when I was writing the book, and I had it pretty well finished. Then one day I was sitting on a flight flown from here. I spent a lot of times in planes, so I was sitting in a flight, and I was sitting next to a fella, and he said to me, "Do you remember me?" I said, "Yeah, somewhat, yeah." He said, "Well, I'm the my name is Tom Romer, and I'm the Vice President Academics of British Columbia Institute of Technology." I said, "Okay, I remember." He said, "You were writing a book about Against All Odds." I said, "It's done." I said, "I'm writing another one, and that's about ADHD." And he said, "That's interesting." I said, "I got it nearly finished." So he said to me, they are looking at a whole different approach to learning, really, is that rather than studying a particular skill set and focusing on that, they have all the other things. So you sit in school for 4 years to get to learn about that one area in particular, and the other things become all secondary. And so they call it micro-certification. It means that if you have a skill set, they'll focus on that, and then the other ones you pick up later, so you're not sitting in a classroom for the next 4 years, and so it becomes then much more effective. And I believe it's a change that is taking place to a certain extent, but there's still a ways to go. But I also say about a book like this is, I say to a lot of people, it's not only those that are ADHD affected by trauma or all the other reasons, First Nations and all of those kind of things, but also for individuals that you cannot avoid not interacting with people with ADHD. Not in with your family, not with your friends, not with the workplace or in the world, because they are somewhat different. And to understand, not in a bad way, but they are somewhat different. And the more you find out about them, the more you will be able to relate for them. So I did that, and then I'm writing another book. I have to just tell you about this one too, because you can relate, and you come to mind when I tell you this, and that's why it was so interesting on me while I'm talking to you. You're saying, I know I can relate to that. So there are so many people, they don't like what they're doing, and even older people say,
miserable. They're
yeah,
so miserable.
and they take it home with them all around in the world and saying, you got to do something about that. Then I
Yeah.
talk to kids about it and saying, what are you going to do when you grow up, or what are you thinking? You say, I don't know. I said, what you should do is get to know something about the different skill sets. If you want to be entrepreneurial, talk to entrepreneurs. If you want to be a doctor, or whatever, or no matter what,
Do something that you love and that you have a heart and a passion for. The only reason I became great at what I do is because I loved helping people, and I was doing just that. So
and that's
whatever
the point.
you do in life, and that's the thing, people just don't do what makes them happy. They do what they think they need to do, or what's required, or standards want for you. Everybody's different.
So I wrote a book about it, at least in my mind, is say finding your passion, living the dream. And then the question would be, so John, are you living the dream? I am. So and even now at 83 and having done all of this work and all the other things, I still get up in the morning at 5:30. I always think I'm late, and so I'm in the hurry. I always make my bed. And then, every day to me is excitement. So I'm now then saying that I felt like I had been a failure when I failed grade 3 and failed grade 7 3 times. I felt I had to start anew. So going to Canada, although it was my dream to go to the land of my heroes, fitted me. My grandfather was a furniture maker. My dad managed a small lumber. I was going to go into lumber. I'm going to build my own lumber company. But I wanted to start with nothing. And I did that. And then I became an author. Now, the other thing that I did, and I have to add to it, is that those were the elements that changed my life dramatically. The other part that I had, because of lack of confidence, likely on my part, that was still, obviously I couldn't speak the language as well as others maybe, and then, so I didn't quite have that confidence. And then, even when I was already successful and had successful companies, I still felt that I had been a failure to a certain extent, and then communicating about it was difficult for me. And then so one day, an ex-sister-in-law that I had, she said I could interact with people in my company, about 3 or 4, but anything bigger than that, I didn't work for me. So they said, I'm going to take you to Toastmasters. And Toastmasters is interesting because I said, okay, what are you doing at Toastmasters? He said, well, they learn you to speak and doing those kind of things and give you confidence. And I said, do I have to say anything when I'm done? He said, no, you just sit down and halfway through the meeting, somebody got up and he said, hey, John, tell us a little bit about you. I said, oh my God, I'll never go back here. But I stayed there for 10 years. And I became a distinguished Toastmaster, right, the highest level that you can get in Toastmasters, and it changed my life. Between those elements, that going to Canada, then deciding to start with nothing, to prove to me, not to anybody else, and then after that, I was well into my 60s. I became an author, an in-demand public speaker. The other thing that I did that changed my life is that I nearly died at one point. You know, I had a case of diverticulitis, and that gave me a shock. And I thought I have to do more on my health, diet, and the gym. So I started in a serious way going to the gym. Before that, what I would do was everybody does. They buy the membership to the gym because they said so. New Year's Eve, this is what I'm going to do. And the part of that is the gym. And I would go there for 2 weeks, and then I give you 100 reasons as to why I don't have time to go. But then I knew I had to do something about it, and so I hired a trainer, and I went to the gym, and I started training for about 6, 7 years, and then somebody said to me in the gym, now I was 67, approaching 70, have you ever thought about competing? I said, me? You know? And then I thought, yeah, I'm going to compete. And so I started competing, and then in 2017, 2018, I competed bodybuilding physique here in Northern BC, came in second bodybuilding, third in physique, qualified me for the province, came in third in physique, second bodybuilding. That qualified me for the nationals in the Arnolds. And then came...
Congratulations. Wow.
Then came COVID, and now at 83, I'm training again, and then 24, when I'm 84, I'm gonna again compete at the Arnolds. And I told Arnold already, and he promised me he would take a picture of me, and you know, but that's what I'm doing. So that's kind of. So I agree with you. You can do anything. Everything is possible, right? So, but you have to stay positive, avoid negative, find that passion, and then work hard, you know, and you know, and then some people say to me, you know, you're lucky, and say, well, the harder you work, the luckier you get. That's kind of how it works, and I avoid the negative. I always say, you know, you know, you have to stay very positive, and it's still a land of opportunity. And if I look around the world now, with all the things that are going on in Europe and the Ukraine and Middle East and all those kind of places, I fly around North America, US and Canada a lot, and every time I look out of the windows, I say, it's paradise. You know, we are so lucky. You know, let's hope we don't screw it up, right?
Yeah, and we just need to shine more light, because right now I feel like the world needs so much more light. And, you know, when I lost everything, that's when I first started writing my book. And yes, it took me 12 years to finish it. It's finally finished, and it is available on Amazon.
Okay,
no one can
show it a little bit better. I can only see part of it. So the title of the book is?
No One Can Stop Me But Me.
I love it. Yeah. So no one, and I agree. You know, that is no question about that. And so it's available. Is it also audio?
We do not have the audio. It will be done by the time it goes live. It's January 16th. It will be out. So we will have an audio as well, and it is available on Amazon now.
I like it. And so my books, I'm going to send you copies of these, all three of them, and I'm going to sign them to you, and they are on audio as well. So the interesting part about the book is, and obviously you get them for free, but I don't know if you can see it or not. Can you see what the price is of this book?
I can't.
$25.47.
Wow.
$25.47.
Oh, that's perfect. Exactly. Invest in yourself, everybody. Buy the books. That is investing in you. People are so afraid to invest in themselves, and that's the greatest thing that helped me in my life. So buy John's books. It's $25.47. That's beautiful.
And so your story is amazing, Jennifer. You've gone through a lot, you learned a lot, and as I shared with you, I have gone through, not quite like what you have been through, but in different ways I have been. The story is no different then, and then you believe in yourself that you can do it, and then obviously You know, the driver initially to bring you from one level to the other was Destiny, your daughter, when she was born. And then obviously since that time is, you know, you brought up the family, and all four of them now getting to the age where they are getting closer to being on their own, and you're a success story. The other thing and since you're an expert in the field, is that all the people watching us from around the world, and the United States in particular. So I'm kind of looking, I'm an optimist but also a realist, you know, that we are relying on housing starts in the United States a lot for lumber prices to go up where they should be. And it has been a tough go since the last 2, 3 years, 4 years. And I'm kind of thinking inflation levels are critically important. It went from as high as 9% in the US, I'm talking now the US inflation rate, to where today it is around 3.1%, probably going to 2.5%, hopefully in next year. And, you know, and then we see the mortgage rates coming down from, as you said, somewhat north of 8% to, I kind of looked it up actually, 6.78 in that area for a 30-year mortgage rate. So things are starting to come down, hopefully to about 4.5. I don't see it going back down to 2 or that percent, but say 4.5, you know, between 4 and 5% likely. And I think I'm optimistic about next year, and the economy is the driver. So I'm fairly optimistic, and it seems that the stock market is rising right now. U.S. housing starts in November were up by 14.5%, I believe, you know, which is driving again the economy. And then, but I've always found in my experience in the lumber industry, housing starts are the first ones to go down in the economy, but also one of the first ones to come back, you know, when things are turning around. So I am, although I'm an optimist, but I try to be also realistic, that I'm fairly optimistic as to where we are going in the economy. I'm talking about the US now, and Canada is very closely connected to that. Would you agree with that, or what is your view on where are things going?
I absolutely agree. So obviously people were just shocked at how quickly the interest rates went up. This was like a 25-year high on interest rates, and everybody had got their heads adjusted to the 2 and 3% that are not coming back. I do not believe they will be back. But there's also a severe shortage of homes on the market. And we have to remember that we didn't build homes for like 10 years during the crash. It took us like 10 years to recoup from that, right? So now building is still going to flourish, and properties are still going to move, and it's still, there's such an abundance of buyers that haven't yet bought, because when we crashed last time, millennials stopped buying and started living with their parents much longer. So that's a whole market that has just pushed into the industry. And so the only reason it slowed down, we had to increase interest rates so that the market could slow down, because prices were increasing too quickly. So I believe we're fine. The best is yet to come. I know 2021 was the heightened year that I've ever had in the industry after 18 years, but I believe there's more to come, and we're going to see a huge boom.
Yeah. So you're optimistic.
Absolutely. There's no other way to be. I wouldn't be any other way.
So, Jennifer, it was a pleasure.
I'm going to give you a fun fact really quick. So in 2021, there was 300,000 loan officers in the United States. Right now, there's approximately 60 to 80,000 after this year. So for me, this is like the greatest time ever. My competition has just been cut like in 4. So I mean, I'm ready. So it's been a pleasure speaking with you. You're going to be thriving in your lumber business, and I'm so excited to read your books.
Now I have to ask you one more question. Is that So for the people in Illinois that are looking for you and saying, I want to deal with Jennifer, you know, because I'm thinking about a mortgage, can people get a hold of you somehow, or ask for
Yes.
advice, or ask for your book, or so how best to
Yes.
get a hold of you?
Yes,
And
absolutely. You don't just have to be in Illinois. I am licensed in multiple states, so
okay,
anywhere across the United States. You can
yeah,
go right to my website, and I will tell you, we are known to help those who have been declined by other lenders, help people get into homes. So if your deal's falling out, you need a second opinion, have your client apply with us today. Anybody who's been denied, the reason why I can do the things that I have is because I lived payday loan to payday loan. So I know how to craft solutions. You can apply on my website at approvedbyjen.com or reach out to me directly on my mobile line at 708-602-5366.
say it once more,
And
just to make sure that people
once
write it
again,
down.
the phone number is 708-602-5366. And you can follow me on Instagram at I am Jen, Jenn Hernandez.
Excellent, Jennifer. It was delightful, amazing, and let's make sure we stay in touch.
For sure. And I want to send you my book, and I can't wait to read yours. I'm so excited.
Excellent.
And we're going to do business because I'm going to create housing for low to moderate income areas, and I'm going to use you for my lumber.
I love it. Okay, Jennifer, you take care now.
Thank you so much. I'm honored
Bye-bye.
to be here. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye.